You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. I am with Adam Toth today with Toth Associates Consulting Engineering. Toth Associates is an engineering company here in Springfield, Missouri, but also in Oregon, Washington, and Montana. Adam, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am very excited about this conversation today because it's a leadership conversation, and it's going to, my hope is that anybody who is stuck in the rut of retention, culture, or aspiring young leaders, my hope is that they can learn from you. Obviously, you have had a lot of success in this with 200 employees right now.
Yes.
Currently. Okay, 200, multiple states and managing those employees. So I'm really excited to learn from you and for our listeners to be able to take the tools from your tool belt and hopefully be able to implement them in their area.
Great. Let me give you a little sneak peek of some of the things to come. Whenever people ask, what's the biggest key to being a successful engineering firm? Most people think it's high quality engineers, super smart people, technical people, and that's all true, but most engineering firms have that. What differentiates us from others is that we put people first, and that has been the key to our success. So you'll hear that undertone in a lot of what I say today is just in treating people as people and putting them first, and that's led to a lot of our success.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool because I'm not going to say usually, but when businesses grow, sometimes, and especially at the amount that you are growing, it's easy to forget that. It's really easy to get caught up in the growth and forget that people matter. People are why you have it. So so before we came on, you were telling me a little bit, what started Toth Associates?
So I'll go way back in time. My dad actually started a firm in 1978 with another gentleman. And I interned with that company one summer when I was in college. And then in 2001, my father sold that firm. He retired, and I was in college at the time. And then at the end of 2003, it was my senior year of college. I was considering law school. I was considering going to MIT to get a master's in engineering. And I remember the phone call, calling my dad up and saying, hey, those things can wait. What do you think about starting a company? So my senior year Christmas break, we actually started doing business January 2nd at the kitchen table. And so just the two of us. And luckily, he had good contacts in the industry. We were able to secure some work pretty quickly, and that's how we started.
That's really cool. And I love that the foundation of this is at a kitchen table because it shows so many people you don't have to have the whole kit and caboodle to start. And what did that look like at the kitchen table, starting with your dad, having a relationship with your dad, a family relationship, but then a business relationship? What was that dynamic and how did you navigate that?
So my dad and I were always good friends. We fished together a lot when I was younger, and then that transitioned to golf as I got older. And so we had a very good friend dynamic going into it. Interesting, my dad actually had an offer before we decided to start this company to start a branch for another company. And at the time, my dad mentioned that there was a chance that he and his son may want to work together. And the guy, I guess that he had a bad relationship with his son starting a business together. And so he told my dad that he would not allow my dad to start a division for them if he was going to bring his son on board because he didn't want to be a part of another father-son relationship going bad. And so our company started with that in mind of we need to be able to overcome challenges that sometimes father and sons have when they work together. And so one of the biggest challenges the first 5 years of business was from that, right? So I was a smart kid that thought I knew everything, and my dad had obviously proven himself owning a company for 23 years. And so we were always very open and honest with each other, whereas from his standpoint, he probably wasn't used to a 22-year-old kid questioning his decisions. And then from my standpoint, it was my dad, and I was used to questioning all of his decisions. And so it probably took about 5 years before we really both found our groove and figured out, okay, he's really good at this and I can trust him at this. And at the same time, he found out what I was really good at and what he could trust me with. And so it took us about 5 years. We had some heated conversations during those 5 years. But at the end of the day, we both recognized that we loved each other, that we were in it for the right reasons, and that even if we had a heated conversation, we could still look each other in the eye and go play a round of golf together or something.
Yeah.
And so I would just say that to people going into business with family members, or that it creates more open communication because you have less of a filter with the family members. So you have to know going into it, your family members are going to tell you way more honestly than maybe anyone else would. So you have to be able to take that. But at the same time, what a great thing to be able to see your dad every day when you go to work and be able to have successes together. And so the rewards have been well worth it. But just know that communication is going to come very raw and very quickly at you, and know to be able that it's from the right place, and that if everyone is moving towards the right goal, that it's for the best long term.
And would you say, for anybody who is listening and they're going, I really don't like confrontation though, I don't want Thanksgiving to suck, like I don't want this discomfort, so I'm just going to hold it back, hold it in, just for the sake of, this is family. Would you say that the long term, it is better to just have those upfront conversations? It is better to just go through what you just talked about than suppress it. Do you think that the long-term outcome, it would be worse if they don't deal with it because it's family and they're trying to put a Band-Aid over it?
I think you have to talk about it early on. As I said, it took us about 5 years to figure out how to work together harmoniously. And not that the first 5 years we had all these issues or anything, but maybe once a month something would come up where we had a difference of opinion on something. But after those 5 years, we really didn't have that anymore moving forward. And so I would say you have to figure out early on how you work together and be honest with each other. And I think that that's not just for family members. I think that's for all partners.
I agree.
And you just have to be honest with each other and be willing to communicate and have those hard conversations.
And how would you pick and choose what is something that needs to be talked about and what is something that isn't important and it's more maybe ego or personal opinion? How would you pick and choose that? What would you say is important and what would you say isn't?
I think that you can follow your gut there. If something is really eating at you, you probably need to talk about it. I think it's always worth waiting a day to see if it is still as important the next day. I think, not bringing up challenging things whenever there's other challenging things going on that can lead to difficult conversations or people's feelings getting more involved. Bring up the tough stuff when everybody is coming from a good place. But I think if it eats at you or it eats at you for multiple days or weeks, you need to have that conversation.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of tend to go with if something upsets me immediately, I tend to go, I need a few hours or a day or so to reflect and go, where is this actually stemming from? Is it stemming from, like somebody who's prior upset me in this area and I'm letting it fester into here and I'm going through like, the wrong lens? Or is this something that I'm just having a really bad day and is it worth me making a stink over? So I'm with you. Like I tend to go, let's give this a day, even in just regular relationships, just giving it like a day. So no. All right. What are some early mistakes outside of what we have just talked about? What are some early mistakes or challenges that you faced as a manager, and how did it shape your approach today? Because you get really good at something because you either learned the hard way or you learned from others. So what is the background that has given you the ability to be successful in this?
So I would say one of the early mistakes I made was taking things maybe a little bit too personal. And I'll always remember a conversation I had with my dad. Someone had just come into my office and had kind of vented about a bunch of stuff that was going on, and they were upset, and it upset me. And I went to go talk to my dad to ask him for some guidance on how I should deal with that situation. And he basically said that as a leader, people like to complain to you or gripe to you, and they need to get stuff off their chest. And he said that sometimes you just need to listen. And if he let every time that someone voiced displeasure towards him affect him, that he'd be in an insane asylum. And so I still take things really personally, right? I care a lot about our employees. I care a lot about our clients. But I try to recognize that sometimes people just need to vent and not to take things so personally that it ruins my day or ruins the things that I'm working on. And so I would say that was an early mistake I made, was being too reactionary or taking things too personally and not recognizing them for what they were. Yeah.
No, that's really good. That's actually good for me. I really struggle with doing everything that I do, like last year running for school board, like you sometimes are a target and I do take things very personally. And so one of the things that I love in these leadership conversations that I will ask everybody is, how do you navigate that? Like what are the tools that you have had to learn over the years to get better at that? And obviously not that it goes away, but so that it doesn't ruin your whole day, because that's what it will do for me. Like I'll be the whole day will suck, and I'll sit on it and ruminate on it. And so I personally am working on, how do I not let this stuff affect me? So what are tools that you have either had, or what have you done to get better at navigating that?
So I think time is a big one. I think being confident in yourself is a big one. Telling yourself, reminding yourself of the successes that you've had, reminding yourself that things are good, reminding yourself that this issue will pass in time also, and taking a little time, taking some deep breaths, maybe finding something that makes you happy, if it's going to the break room to get a cookie, if it's getting a coffee somewhere, but just not making a reactionary decision immediately upon that is really key to staying stable in those situations.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you let our listeners know that, because I guarantee a lot of people just heard that and went, yep, no, I relate.
So another thing, since you asked about an early career mistake or something, I think is really relevant to a lot of young leaders, is everybody has imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And I think that people handle imposter syndrome in different ways. And in my role, I work with a lot of CEOs of other companies from our clients. And so I see new CEOs handle that in different ways. Some will they feel like they need to let everyone know that they're smart and that they're deserving of their role. Yeah. And so you will see them in situations latch on to something that they feel confident about, or really nitpick people on a specific topic to try to make themselves feel like they're important or knowledgeable or worthy of their position. What I would say is that the best leaders that I see are those that are willing to ask for help and tell people that they don't know everything.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to do that sometimes, right? You've just been put in a position of leadership, if that's a manager, a president, a CEO, whatever it is, and you think you're supposed to know everything. But the best leaders recognize they don't know everything and are willing to ask for help and are willing to be vulnerable and tell others that they don't know everything and they need help from others. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the sooner a new manager can recognize that everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes through struggles, and they're not alone in that they're part of a bigger team. And the sooner that they realize that they can lean on others and trust in others, the more successful they'll be as a leader.
That's so good. That's good. Okay, so what's in that, navigating those challenges, navigating, early on mistakes. So over time, you've been able to fine-tune your processes. You've been able to learn, fine-tune, get better. What processes or strategies have you had to fine-tune, and how do you identify when you need to fine-tune something?
So I will give an example. You brought it up in the intro on how have we been able to maintain a people-first culture as we've grown. Mm-hmm. And this is an area that we've had to fine-tune. Early on, and this is still philosophy to this day, is you just treat others the way that you want to be treated, right? The golden rule holds a lot of value in business. And so I like to take that one step farther. Whenever a challenging HR issue comes up, I will often ask myself, how would I want someone to treat one of my 4 kids? Mm-hmm. And then that's the decision we make. And so we don't ask what's best for the company. We don't ask what's best for the bottom line. We ask what's best for the employee. And 99% of the time, that's the decision we make. The other 1% of the time, the attorneys say you can't do that. So by leading with people first has been a key to our success. Now, as we grow as a company, how do we continue to do that? Mm-hmm. How do we continue to instill that culture, that value in all of our new employees? So as we got to about 10 people at our company in the first few years, we used to sit at the break room table. Everyone would eat lunch together. We would do crossword puzzles together. And you knew every project everyone was working on. You knew everybody's activities on the weekends. You knew their families. Everyone knew what the company was doing. As we grew, a couple years ago, I would hear people say, "Oh, I didn't know we did that," or "I didn't know that that's what they did." And so I had to examine and be like, how do we communicate or educate our people of those early values, that early culture, what we do, without having everyone sit down at the break room table every day to eat lunch? Mm-hmm. And so we created a new hire program where all new hires go through a 5-month program where one day a month they go to lunch. In our office, we bring in food. We love food, so we make any excuse we can to feed our employees. Yeah. And we go through this program of 5 different lessons or educational programs. The first one is the history of the company and the culture and mission, vision, and values of the company. And so all new employees go through an hour talk from me, and I give the history of the company and what's our why, right? Mm-hmm. And then we do 2 more talks on the electric utility consulting services we provide, and then the civil and structural and land services that we provide. So all of our employees know what services we provide. Then we do a talk on the role of a consultant. So kind of teaching our employees what they can say to clients, what they shouldn't say to clients, how to interact with clients. And then the 5th one is a panel discussion of kind of lessons learned. And we will bring in a young engineer, a middle career person, and a later career person, and kind of ask questions on how they transitioned as a new employee and some of the things that helped them. So I think being more intentional, and not just assuming that every new hire knows why the company's there, the history of the company, the values of the company, the services they offer. And we had to be more intentional on that and make sure that all of our new hires know those things. And that's been a change that we had to make that's been successful.
That's wonderful. And I really appreciate that you're involved in that you're not a president of a company that sends somebody else to do it while you do your thing, but you're there and you're intentional and you're building that relationship too. And I really appreciate that. That's actually Susan, a lot of people know I'm at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and what she's really good at is that relationship piece. And that you're not just, and I think that's for everybody. Like, people don't want to be a transaction. They just don't. And when they see that the head of their company sees relational value in them, I think it makes people want to do even better because you're not wanting to disappoint somebody who sees value in you, instead of, well, I'm here because they need employees. I'm here because they need to check this box. And so I love that. And I really appreciate that as a president, you are there in front of them. I think that's great. And I think that's a good takeaway for young leaders. Don't get so big that you're no longer there, that you're no longer involved. And I think it's really easy for people to do that. So I appreciate that. Okay. What would you give your younger self? So your younger self, what advice would you give about building a strong, loyal team? Hindsight 2020, what would you give yourself?
So a little bit different answer on this. I would give a younger self the advice, not necessarily on building a team, but I would just tell myself to be patient, right? So building a company is the long game. It's a marathon. And so you don't have to do everything right away all at once. And sometimes you can't rush growth. Sometimes the only way to grow is to experience things. And that's really hard to communicate to someone that has been successful in school, that has been successful in what they've done in sports, right? You can practice your way to success. You can study your way to success. In business, sometimes you just have to experience things before you can be ready to succeed. And so I would tell my younger self, be patient. And I know that that's not really on the team building or culture part of the question, but I think the best advice from my younger self would be to be patient.
That's great. Especially people have comparison syndrome and going, well, my business is 3 years old, 5 years old, and I'm not where this business is. Well, how long has Toth Associates been around?
Just over 21 years.
Okay. So, and when did you hit that, even growing out of Missouri? How long ago was that?
About 12 years ago, 10 years ago.
Okay. So it took a little bit. And so I would encourage people who are listening, exactly what Adam said, be patient, but also don't compare yourself, because everybody moves at their own pace. And to look at where Adam's at or whatever other company you're looking at going, well, why can't we just get there yet? Well, because it takes time. And I appreciate, 21 years and 12 years ago was growing out of Missouri. So don't count yourself out just yet because it's not moving at the pace. And, I appreciate what Adam said about being patient. As somebody who's not patient, as somebody who I'm a goal crusher. So I love to crush goals. I love to, I love that. And so I personally, that is something that I have to be very self-reflective on, is patience and understanding. Yes, this person's here, but they've been at it 6 years longer than I have. And there's definitely something to that. So, all right, what? Mm-hmm.
I want to jump in and elaborate on what you just said there. Sometimes it just takes some luck to make the next jump in your career or your business. And so you have to be ready for it so that you can jump on that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So as a firm, my dad's first firm only worked for clients kind of in a 6-hour driving radius of Springfield, Missouri. And the first 10 years of our business, those are all the clients we worked for. We only targeted clients around Springfield or within a day's trip around Springfield. And we did all the right things. We cared about our clients. We did good work for them. And we were not seeking to outgrow this region. We were not actively pursuing other parts of the country. Well, one of our clients was at a utility in Arkansas, and then he moved to a utility in Oklahoma, and then he moved to a utility out in Oregon and called us up and said, hey, would you like to work for us? I like you as a consultant more than the consultants that are out here. And so we said, we can try, but we're not certain how well we can compete with having to fly out there. And we both agreed to try a small project and see if it could be successful. And so we did a small project, then a bigger project, then a bigger project. And now that client is one of our biggest clients. And so whenever we got a big client out in the Pacific Northwest, then we followed up with opening offices out there and then pursuing other clients in that region. But we weren't actively chasing that region, but we were ready if the opportunity came along, and we capitalized on, in one essence, luck, right? But we capitalized on that luck, and we made our own luck and turned it into a big success and growth opportunity for us. At the same time, there are some branches of consulting engineering that we do not offer. We do electric utility consulting, we do civil engineering, structural engineering, but we don't do mechanical engineering right now. And that's something that I've identified for the last 10 years as a business that we want to get into. But we haven't had that opportunity yet. And so we haven't forced ourselves into it. We haven't taken an undue risk to buy a company to do it or to overpay for something to get into it. Or we're patient. We're ready that if that opportunity comes along, but we're not forcing it. And so now, as we look at markets, as we grow our company in other regions of the country, we don't necessarily identify a region because it is a fast-growing region or because it's something that on a whim we just want to go and work in that area. We evaluate the market conditions there, right? So engineering firms have been aging in a lot of areas. And so then as an older engineering force, they may age out and then they sell their company to a mega firm or a stock market company or a venture capital company. And a lot of the time, those companies, after the sale is made, they aren't able to continue to provide the same service that they were. And so that creates an opportunity for us to get work in those areas or provide the service if the existing engineering firms in that area are not succeeding. And so we just have to be patient and wait and watch where in the country are those opportunities, and then try to pursue them whenever those opportunities come available. So what I would say is you can't force growth, because you probably will make a mistake if you are forcing it. You may overbuy. You may you may not make the best business decision, but you have to align yourself to be ready for that opportunity whenever it comes up, and be agile enough to be able to make a quick decision that, yes, that's the direction you want to go, and reallocate resources to capitalize on those opportunities. So I would say that the success in that is the prior planning and being ready and patient, and then, capitalizing on that luck whenever that opportunity does arise.
Okay. And as you're saying that, I really, saying be ready, and to ready yourself. And I think, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but if you force too much and you spread yourself too thin with the things that you have forced and aren't actually valuable, you're not going to be able to be ready for the thing that is going to be valuable and launch you into your next step, because you're spread so thin with the things that you forced. And so I like what you said about being ready and being smart and being wise in your decisions. It all goes along with what you said earlier about also being patient. I just think that's a recipe: the patience, the being ready, the not forcing things. And I think it will give people, like you, a spot to be able to take that next growth step that you were able to take, because you weren't spread so thin trying to force the growth. So that's good. Okay, what is one of the biggest lessons you've learned about leadership through employee retention?
So I think that the employee retention is a symptom of, and I don't think that it should be seen as the root, right? So employee retention is a symptom of, is your workplace a good place to work, right? Is the culture good? Are you empowering your people? So employee retention is really a metric to gauge yourself on the roots of your company, and how are you doing in those areas. So some of the things that I like to think about or talk about whenever it comes to employee retention is, if you're going to spend a third of your waking life at the office, you might as well enjoy it. So we really try to create a positive work environment. And so at our company, we have a full espresso bar where people can go and make lattes or mochas or whatever they want. We have a refrigerator with sodas and sparkling waters or whatever they want. And if you look at the cost to the company for those things, it's actually quite low per employee. But whenever we do satisfaction surveys, that's something that people really value. We also have a fruit bowl, so anybody can go out to the break room and get apples, bananas, oranges at any time they want. And so that's a positive, because that's healthier for people to eat rather than the candy on some people's desks. But at the same time, it also it brings a lot of benefit to our employees, that they feel like they are working somewhere that actually cares about them. And so you have to create a company where people want to go to work in the most way that they can, right? So everyone would rather be golfing or fishing or whatever you like to do. But you don't regret or hate going to work. And so we really try to create a environment that people enjoy that third of their life at the office as much as possible. Another thing to that is we've hired a lot of my friends, especially early on. We hired a college roommate to start our structural engineering department. We hired two two of my college study buddies that are now VPs in the company. We hired the best man in my wedding's younger brother, who's now a VP in the company. And so working with friends can be really, really rewarding, right? You get to see your friends every day. It can be a challenge, like working with family. You have to be honest and you have to be willing to trust each other. But there's such a benefit there. And so what I tell people is it's really hard to quit a job. It's nearly impossible to quit your friends.
Yeah.
So if you want to improve employee retention, get your employees to be friends with each other because they don't want to quit their friends. And so we do a lot of things to try to foster friendships in the office. We have all kinds of groups. We have a group that goes running. We have a softball team. We have an ultimate frisbee team. We have volleyball teams. We do company picnics. We do a day at the Springfield Cardinals game, a day at the Missouri State Bears basketball game. We have lots of food in the office. We bring in food at least once a month for birthdays or for celebrations when somebody passes the PE exam or graduates or gets a new degree. And so we really try to celebrate all those wins and make a environment where people like the people they're working with. And so we have employee referral bonuses, right? So if you hire your friends, we will compensate you for it. And so some people think people will take advantage of that situation. We haven't seen that. We've seen people, if they are going to put their neck on the line and recommend someone to work there, they're usually really good because they know that that person is going to be a reflection on them, and they want that person to succeed as a good reflection on them. So a lot of things we've done to try to promote friendships in the office. Something that came out of COVID, we now have a ping pong table at our office, which has created a lot of culture and team building. When we moved into the office space we're in now, one of the VPs suggested one of our conference rooms, why don't we get a table the same size as a ping pong table so that if you finish a meeting, you can play a game of ping pong or something. And we went with it.
I love that.
Well, when we moved into this space, it was right in the middle of COVID, and you couldn't meet in a room because you were too close, but you could play ping pong with someone because you were more than 9 feet apart. And so what we found was our employees were going out and playing ping pong with people because that was the only place that they could get that camaraderie during COVID. And so it really... at one point, we had a website where people would log their games and it would rank people like an RPI rating
fun.
For basketball.
Yeah.
We've had tournaments. We have a whole Teams chat dedicated to trash talk on ping pong. So all these things to create that culture, those friendships, that bonding has really been beneficial to our company.
And through all of that, have you seen work production increase?
Oh, absolutely. So what some people, the perception may be that the people that play ping pong are your slackers because they should be at their desk working, and why are they out playing ping pong during the workday? What I would say is the exact opposite. The people that are the most confident in their work product, who are willing to go stand in front of the whole office and basically announce, I'm not working right now, I'm taking a break to play ping pong. Because our ping pong room is right in the middle of the office with a big glass door. And so those people are not only confident in their work, usually they're pretty competitive because they enjoy playing with their friends and maybe talking some trash. And so I find some of our best employees are those that play ping pong. And so it has not led to a drop-off. The place to be concerned is if someone sits at their desk and surfs social media or something on their phone and is just kind of hiding in their office. It's not the people that are out front, standing in front of everyone, taking a break to play ping pong with a coworker. So I think that it's also improved cross-department communication. So whereas people used to, sit in their department or their area and maybe didn't communicate with other parts of the company, they've been able to make friends through playing ping pong, through our volleyball team, through our ultimate frisbee team, through our softball team. So through these things, you're able to make relationships across different departments, and that's improved our performance or our output because our groups work better together on collaboration projects.
Oh, that's good. I love that because you're right. That's why I asked because, I have actually heard people go, we don't do that because we don't want people to not be hitting goals or to be, but I 100%, so I wanted to see if your increase was there because I think it would have an increase as well in productivity and just having a brain break, a fun brain break. And I love that. I am going to ask you, are you good at ping pong?
Yes.
Are you? When you go and do this with your employees, I just want to know, are you socializing or are you actually competitive in this and good? Or are you getting the trash talk in the chat?
At one point when we had our website that ranked everybody, I was ranked number 1 on the board.
Are you a goal crusher? You're like me. I'm a goal crusher. I don't care if I started out poorly in ping pong, but if I know that I'm going to have to compete against somebody, I will do everything in my power to make sure that I am always at the top. Like it's a thing. I don't know if I would be good at it, Adam, because I may actually turn people off in the workplace because I get so competitive. I don't know.
I am a very competitive person,
yes.
And that is something that I've had to balance because as a people-first company,
yeah.
How does that combine with competitiveness, right? And I think that there is room for both valuing people and being competitive. And where I think that changed the most for me early in my career was whenever I stopped seeing people maybe coworkers, maybe clients, maybe anybody out there as competition and started seeing them as teammates. And so that's hard for a lot of people. You go through school and you may be a teammate on a class project, but you're still a competitor against them on the curve on your tests. And so you, as much as you want to be teammates with people, you will always be in a situation in school where you're competing against people. And so going into a workplace where you truly see your coworkers as your teammates and you don't have to be competitive with them, that's a transition for a lot of people. And so that was something that I had to work on in myself. And now, my life is so much happier that I see everybody as my teammate. And we're all working together to try to meet a goal. And I don't feel competitive towards anyone that I work with. And that's been a really rewarding thing for me as a person. So on that, I think that for us, putting people first has proven to be very beneficial for us. So I think that whenever you find things that work, it doesn't have to negate your competitiveness. And so I think that I have done a good job. We have done a good job, being competitive as a company while still valuing people.
Okay, so I'm actually going to ask you a question from that for personal input, because one of my Achilles heels is I believe that if I can work at this pace, everybody can work at this pace. And then if that's not the case, then I get really frustrated. And Susan, my direct, she's told me, she's like, if you expect everybody to work like you, you'll kill them. You have to stop. You can't put these expectations on people. It's hard for me, and I am getting better at it. But I do want to hear your input. How do you balance that? How do you balance understanding okay, wait, this is my personality. That doesn't mean that it has to be everybody's, but also with the expectation of feeling that everybody should be at that expectation. It's hard, So personally, I would love to know.
So I think that what you have to do first is put yourself in their shoes. And so everybody has different values. Everybody sees their job as something different, right? We've had some employees that are 8 to 5 people. They will not work a half hour longer. And if you're trying to get a job done, that can be challenging. You could question their desire for the company to succeed, but they may be a great employee. They may care about the company as much as anyone else, but that's just where they draw the line. And you have to recognize that and not shame them or be mad at them for it, because that is what they are willing to give to the company, and you have to appreciate what they're willing to give to the team. And then you can design your team around everybody's strengths. So you know that they're really good at A, B, and C, but they're not going to be the one to put in the extra hours if something tough comes up. You know that somebody else may be good at D, E, and F, and they're willing to put in the extra hours. And so you have to manage your team in that way where you see everybody's strengths and you put them in a place to succeed off of their strengths. And I think that what it comes down to is recognizing that everybody is trying to help the team, help the project, help the client move forward. And whenever you recognize everybody is on the same value system, then you don't you see them as a positive instead of seeing them for their weaknesses. And so recognizing not everybody is a killer. Not everybody is a A-star. I'm going to mess this up, and I hate quoting things when I don't have the research in front of me. And so I apologize in advance. But I was listening to a podcast, or it was an audiobook, and they talked about there was a university research study where somebody did surveys in Silicon Valley early on, and they did this survey every year for many decades, essentially. And so then this person had these company surveys from the early starts of many of these large startup that became uber successful companies. And so they looked at what were the biggest keys to success in companies. And most people thought that, or if you ask people what's the biggest key, they would say that they would assume that the companies that succeeded the most had the most A players, the most killers, the most all-stars, right? And those companies were the companies that got the most venture capital money. Those companies were the companies that saw the fastest initial growth, but they were not the long-term most successful companies.
Interesting.
The companies that were the most long-term successful were the companies that had the most loyal employees that bought into the team. And they maybe had more B and C players, but their employees were loyal and they bought into the goals and culture of the company. And so what I would say is that you can't have a team of entirely A players because you need everybody's skill set. You need some really loyal people that are going to be there no matter what. Sometimes people that are the superstars, they move on. They go somewhere else. And that's okay. That's great for them, and you need to be happy for them as they move on. But sometimes a B player who's loyal is going to be more valuable than an A player who may jump after a few years. So recognizing that not everyone has to be a all-star, A player, killer, whatever you want to call it, and you can still have a very successful team. And I think that research stuck with me because it showed me that the employee retention, loyalty, culture is really what leads to long-term successful companies, not that everybody is a killer within the organization.
That's really good perspective, because it really is my Achilles heel. It is. And you guys are just going to learn about me on this podcast and all my struggle points, but that's a big struggle point for me. And it is something that I have to reflect on and often have to go and get perspective on. And I have to ask Susan, is this a me issue or is this a valid issue? Like, is this just me, And so that's really good perspective. All right, we are going to kind of wrap this up. I'm going to kind of skip down. There's a lot more that we could talk about on this subject, but for the sake of time and getting Adam out of here, how do you handle setbacks when a valued employee decides to leave? Kind of going with what we were just talking about, your A players moving on. How do you handle that?
So you never like to see people move on. And it hurts. It hurts. And it hurts as you try to become friends with people, right? So I had an employee that his office was right next to mine. I was trying to train him to take over a lot of the responsibilities I had. He was a top student. He was a 4.0 student. He was likable. He had all the things that you would want to develop into a future leader within the organization. He ended up getting a master's in data science from Stanford while he was working for us. And then he ended up moving out to California, and he now currently works at Microsoft and is working his way up throughout their organization. And so how can I be upset with that person, right? He's doing what he feels most passionate about. He's doing great for his family, his career, and all of that. And so that was tough on me. And it goes to what we just talked about, where you have to have a team of enough people where you have enough loyalty and a low enough employee turnover, where you don't have to replace that person with a brand new person. You can replace them with someone that's been with your organization for a number of years, and now it gives that next person an opportunity to take on more responsibility. Where the toughest hires and the most opportunity for a bad hire is when you hire out of an extreme point of need. So if you have a superstar and you have nobody behind that person that can do that role, and that person leaves, you are extremely vulnerable. And so you are going to end up overpaying for the replacement, and you're going to be at the liberty of the market of who's available at that time. And so you don't hire from a place of strength. And we've had some hires when that has happened that have been unsuccessful hires. And so the best hires are whenever we're able to hire a college intern and they work for us a few years and we get to know their work ethic, they get to know our business, and it's a good fit, and then we can train them up for many years, and then after several years they're ready to take on that role. And so another thing that I've said before is we hire the person, we don't necessarily hire the skill set. We can train someone to do a skill set if they're the right person. Now, it takes time to do that. So you can't let yourself get in that point of extreme need where you have to hire a specific skill set by a specific date or you can't get projects done. And that happens to everybody, and that's a struggle. And the best scenario is to always be hiring the right people, hiring them young or hiring them inexperienced, making sure they're the right person, training them to do the job, and then you have a talent pool ready to take on more responsibility if someone leaves or as your company grows. Yeah,
no, that's good. Okay, so to wrap us up, somebody's listening and they're kind of in a rut with this. This is their struggle right now that they're trying to navigate. Or a young leader. What is the encouragement you would want to leave with them to be their takeaway?
Oh, to be a takeaway. That's a tough one. But I am going to tell you a story.
Yes, please do.
That may or may not answer this question, but it's something that that really stuck with me or struck with me in the last year or so. So there was a day, let's say a year ago, where I was getting my kids ready to go to school. We have 4 kids. They range in age from 7 to 15. And at the time, I think my youngest was 6. And he, it was over the summer because I was going to work and he was not. And so it was probably like a year and a half ago. And he said to me, "Why do you have to go to work? Why can't you stay home with me?" And I said, "Oh, I have to work so that we can afford the house or so that we can do fun things or go on trips." Well, this kid's prized possession in life was he has an old iPhone that we will occasionally let him play games on that doesn't have cell access or anything. And he says to me, he goes, "Well, what if you sold my iPhone, and what if you sold your iPhone? Would that be enough money that you wouldn't have to go to work anymore?" And that absolutely crushed me, because here's a kid willing to give up his most prized possession to get more time with his father. And so the next day I was running with a neighbor of mine that I run with on several mornings a week. And I'm telling him this story and telling him how much it wore on me. And he said, "You need to tell your son that you are like a superhero." And I'm like, "How does that work? That's way too cocky, right? I'm not a superhero." And he said, "You are, though. There's 200 families that rely on you every day for their livelihood. You have how many clients that rely on you for good, solid advice? And all of these people are relying on you." And he said, "Do you think Superman wants to go into the burning building for his own good? No, he does it because it's for the good of society." And so as a company, as a leader, I do go to work every day for my employees. I don't go to work every day for myself. And so that is a mindset that I think is something that has stuck with me, is that, by no means do I see myself as a superhero. But the mindset is that people count on you. And if you don't show up, then you negatively impact a lot of people. And so that was impactful for me, and I think it's been impactful for my kids to understand why I go to work. And so that I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I do want to end with this. Everything that Adam has said, it's very relational. It's very servanthood. It's very people first, like he's been saying. And it's easy for people to go, "Well, what if he's just saying that or something?" And I just want to attest to this because I live in the area. Adam genuinely is a servant person. I have seen him coaching on the sidelines at Fieldhouse. I have seen him on the sidelines of soccer games a long time ago when my daughter was in soccer as well. And he was also a board president for Big Brothers Big Sisters and had a little himself. And if you're like, what is that? It's basically mentorship. So he mentored somebody. And so he is not just saying this from a business perspective, really genuinely. And I love this conversation because it just gives another layer to Adam as a person, but he really is a servanthood people first person, even outside of work. And I appreciate that about you. And I appreciate that especially because being in the position you're in, a lot of people choose not to do that and choose to become very inward. And so I really respect that and appreciate that. And I hope that you guys hear that. And after 21 years, still being a people first person, I love that. And I hope you guys are able to put that as a tool in your pocket as well. And never forget where you started from. Never forget the kitchen table and, and all that. So Adam, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.